If you just received a VA decision letter and you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. These letters can be 15, 20, sometimes 40 pages long. They're dense, repetitive, and filled with legal language. If you don't know what you're looking for, it's easy to misread what actually happened. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to read and decipher a VA decision letter step by step. I'll show you what matters, what doesn't, and how to understand what is missing if you are denied. Let's start at the top. Step 1, the decision summary. You'll usually see something like this. Service connection for tinnitus is granted with an evaluation of 10%, effective March 14, 2024, or service connection for lumbar strain is denied. This section tells you 4 things: granted or denied, the percentage, the effective date, sometimes whether it's deferred. But this is not where you stop. This is just the outcome. The real explanation comes later in the letter. Now move to the section titled Reasons for Decision. This is by far the most important section in the entire letter. Here's what a denial might look like. Example 1 is no current diagnosis. Service connection for migraine headaches is denied because the medical evidence of record does not show a current diagnosed disability. Although you report headaches, there's no formal diagnosis in VA or private treatment records. That tells you immediately what's missing. Element 1 is your current disability. If you were denied for this reason, your next move is not to argue emotionally. Obtain a formal diagnosis from a qualified provider and go back. Now let's look at another example. So example 2 is going to be no in-service event. Service connection for a right knee condition is denied. Service treatment records do not show complaints, treatment, or diagnosis of a right knee condition during active duty. There's no evidence of an in-service injury. That tells you element 2 is missing. This is where buddy statements, performance reports, incident reports, lay statements describing what happened when you were in service, those become critical here. Now, let's look at the most common denial. Ready? Example 3 is negative nexus opinion. Service connection for obstructive sleep apnea is denied. Although you have a current diagnosis and service treatment records, they confirm the complaints of sleep disturbances. The VA examiner opined that your condition is less likely than not, less than 50% probability, incurred in or caused by military service. This is huge. They conceded diagnosis. They conceded your symptoms were in service, but the examiner had a hard time connecting the two. That means element 3, the nexus, failed. That tells you exactly what to fix too. You need a stronger medical opinion that directly connects your condition to service and explains why. Now let's look at the evidence section. You might see something like, we reviewed the following evidence: service treatment records, VA examinations, VA treatment records. They'll all have dates with them. You'll have if there's any lay statements, if your private medical records are not listed here, that's a problem. Go get them in supplemental. If your spouse's statement isn't listed, that means it likely wasn't even considered. This section is your checklist. If it's not listed, assume it didn't influence the decision. Let's talk about rating percentages when something gets granted real quick here. So for example 4, we're going to talk about rating criteria language. An evaluation of 30% is assigned for post-traumatic stress disorder based on occupational and social impairment with occasional decrease in work efficiency and intermittent periods of inability to perform occupational tasks. Then it will say, a higher evaluation of 50% is not warranted unless the evidence shows occupational and social impairment with reduced reliability and productivity due to symptoms such as flattened affect, impaired judgment, panic attacks, more than once a week panic attacks, right? So pause right there for a second. The VA is telling you what 50% requires. If your symptoms actually match that higher criteria, but you didn't document them properly, that tells you that your evidence was incomplete. Not that you don't qualify. So pause. Let's look back at one thing that most veterans miss: favorable findings. So in the favorable findings section, you'll hear things like favorable findings identified in this decision. You have been diagnosed with a degenerative disc disease or something. Military personnel records confirm hazardous noise exposure. Service treatment records document treatment for back pain in 2004, 2008. This is powerful. Those findings are binding unless there's a clear error. That means in an appeal, you do not have to reprove those elements. They're already conceded by the VA. If they conceded diagnosis and in-service injury but denied the nexus, your appeal becomes very focused. You don't have to rebuild your entire case. You surgically address the missing link, which is the nexus. Now let's look at how the VA sometimes explains a treatment gap. So in example 6 is chronicity gap. Although you were treated for back pain during service, there's no documentation of complaints or treatment from discharge in 2010 until 2018. The gap in treatment weighs against a finding of chronicity. That's not the end of the road. That's merely a signal that if you didn't seek treatment because you were self-medicated or you lacked insurance or didn't understand VA benefits, you just need to explain that in a sworn lay statement. You close that gap with narrative evidence. So with all that, let's talk about strategy. After reading your entire letter, ask yourself, which one of these elements failed? Diagnosis, in-service event, nexus, those are the big three, or was it rating severity issue? Then look at the exact language used in the denial. If they say less likely than not due to aging, you need a medical opinion that explains why service contributed beyond natural aging. If they say no objective medical evidence of severity, you need treatment records or evaluations documenting the frequency, duration, and impact. Those are big things. Every denial contains the blueprint for the next move, honestly. The biggest mistake that veterans make is resubmitting the same evidence without addressing the reason for denial. If nexus was missing, don't just resubmit your treatment records. Get a nexus letter. If the severity was understated, document the symptoms that meet the next higher criteria. This is not emotional warfare by the VA, it's structural correction. And here's the shift I want you to make. A VA decision letter is not an attack, it's a technical analysis. When you read it and break it into what was granted, what was conceded, what failed, why it failed, it becomes manageable. Denials are not random. They're very specific. And once you identify what's missing, your next move is very clear. So, if this helped you how to understand how to decode your own decision letter, please consider subscribing. Consider, giving us a like and sharing this with your friends. My whole purpose for this channel is to help veterans get through the VA system and the bureaucracy that goes along with it. Hope you're well. Take care of one another. See you next time.